Hello, everybody. How you doing this fine Monday? There are a lot of updates to go through on the Diddy case. First things first, there's a new enterprise letter, and Diddy is really mad about it. But before we get into that document, which really is the focus of this video, I want to show y'all how many new documents were filed today in the case that are sealed. Yes, they are. They are sealed. Today is Monday, April 28th, and look at all of this. You do have this one motion in limine here. There were actually a few different documents that were filed a few days ago, and then look, all of these documents from docket number 278 all the way to 294, they are all sealed. Do you see what I am talking about? Okay, and then you do get docket number 295, and that's what we're going to look at right now. That is Diddy's objection to the enterprise letter. There has been a new enterprise letter filed, and Diddy is objecting to it. That's docket number 295 that was just filed today. So this is what it looks like. I did highlight some few different things. We're writing to object to the government's latest and much belated enterprise letter, which was sent to the defense at 11:15 p.m. on last Sunday. So basically a week ago. They got it at 11:15 p.m., more than 2 weeks after the grand jury returned a third superseding indictment. So the grand jury has been done for 2 weeks. And they're just adding new enterprise letters. So what is Diddy mad about? Well, the government was supposed to send this enterprise letter we're looking at by February 1st. And like I said, it is April 28th. So instead, the prosecutors have now included a brand new enterprise letter. Like I said, they just sent it to Mark Agnifilo last Sunday at 11:15 p.m. And at the last minute, they are adding new alleged victims, new allegations are actually being added, and new legal theories. Some examples, look, it's all redacted like this, so it's kind of hard to see, what's really being said. But some of the examples seem to revolve around the forced labor allegation, and maybe that the feds are trying to expand the forced labor allegations beyond just victim 4 or 2 or whatever it was. And then there's also allegations of new alleged criminal conduct that has not yet been disclosed before. And Mark Agnifilo or Alexandra Shapiro, whoever it is that wrote this one, she's like, they could have, look, in short, if the government wanted to include these allegations as part of its case, it could have and should have included them in its February 1st letter. But we are in April. It's April 28th, Your Honor. And their arguments are things like, this is unfair, surprise at the last second before trial. You can't possibly expect us, Your Honor, this is Diddy's side, to be able to investigate all of this stuff. We're just finding out about this now. The trial is about to start right now. We're like turning in our questionnaires for the jury. The jury selection is about to start next week. Diddy and them are also saying that this violates the court orders. The court explicitly told them to file the letter by February 1st, and they have amended it many times since then. And Diddy's like, also, their investigation constantly remains ongoing. And look, the government's new allegations span 2 pages. The new allegations span 2 pages, covering multiple victims, numerous additional incidents, criminal allegations, and of course, the government always asserts that the investigation remains ongoing. And it yet may still add additional allegations. What is the purpose of disclosure deadlines, Your Honor? Diddy's side is saying, if the government is free to ignore them and continue to make new allegations up until the eve of trial. Diddy is also arguing that this violates his constitutional rights. The grand jury clause says that you cannot bring new allegations like this or theories of guilt without presenting them first to a grand jury, and the grand jury has been done for 3 weeks on this case. So Diddy is requesting that this new enterprise letter is just kicked out by the judge. His lawyers are accusing the government of ambushing him by sneaking in these new crimes and victims at the last second, and it violates his due process rights. This is Diddy's argument. And they're asking the judge to throw out all the new evidence or just push the trial back so that they can investigate. So if the judge allows this new enterprise letter to go forward, Diddy is saying, fine, I want a continuance of trial. And now this is not the first time that Diddy is trying to get a continuance. Diddy has already tried to get a 2-month continuance, or, it would have been called something else at the time. What was he calling it? It wasn't a stay, then whatever. It was, I don't remember the exact terminology right now off the top of my head. But they're also saying that just getting more time isn't going to cut it. That's not going to quite be enough. They're saying even if they did get more time, Diddy's side is kind of hinting that If the government is trying to change the actual charges, the case could still have grounds for a mistrial, and it could be vulnerable on constitutional grounds of due process, right to a fair trial, the right to be able to adequately investigate your accusers and to prepare your defense and all of that. I think that Diddy and his lawyers' strongest argument is this one right here, that the government hasn't provided any justification for this 78-day late disclosure. To the contrary, the 3500 material and other discovery material makes clear that the government has had access to the relevant witnesses and related documentary and video evidence for many months. In short, if the government wanted to include these allegations as part of its case, it could have and should have in its February 1st letter. And I do wonder why, what they found out that was new, because the grand jury stopped meeting 3 weeks ago. So this honestly, it makes me a little bit aggravated, because if this is true what Diddy's side is saying, which the government has not responded here, the government might respond here and say they lying and here's the proof. So I'm keeping an open mind. But Diddy's side is arguing that they are suffering from an innumerate surprise. And this is just not fair, because grand juries have to approve these new theories of guilt. Look, perhaps more troublingly, he says, the new allegations in the April 20th Enterprise letter make it clear that the government is planning to go to trial on theories of guilt that were never presented to the grand jury. The grand jury clause of the Fifth Amendment requires that federal felonies be initiated by a grand jury. And thus, a criminal case can only proceed to trial on charges for which a grand jury found probable cause. After an indictment has been returned, its charges may not be broadened through amendment except by the grand jury. And when it comes to RICO offenses, once the government charges a particular pattern of racketeering, its choice has consequences. Now, again, what exactly are they talking about? I do not know, because it is behind this redactions. Like, the really important stuff is kind of hidden to help us be able to understand what actually happened. The government's April 20th Enterprise letter alleges not simply new incidents, but entirely new legal theories of guilt. The government now alleges, for example, redacted. In other words, while the government had previously raised forced labor allegations only as to victim 4 in the second superseding indictment, the government now seeks to raise forced labor allegations, redacted. So I don't know what they're talking about. There's no reason to believe these allegations were ever presented to the grand jury, nor approved by them. To the contrary, the government is extremely late. And that extremely late disclosure of new theories suggests a last-minute attempt to alter and broaden its case. But you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. This would constitute an impermissible amendment, according to Diddy. So the government will have their opportunity to respond to this, and then the judge will have to decide, is he going to let this move forward with this new enterprise letter, or is he going to slap the wrist of the government and say, no, you can't bring these new charges, these new victims? Well, if that does happen, then I have a question. As you know, we the people have a question over here. And my question is, why is it that they couldn't have got there together before right now? So you're telling me they have charges that they could have brought and they just were sitting on it for what? And they waited till the last second? I mean, Diddy does kind of have a point. It is like about to happen any moment, this trial. So what the hell? That's all I really had for this one. In the meantime, facts ain't defamation. Love you, meeting. Okay, bye.